One by one they vanished into the forest's embrace, the moon's feeble glow threading through a tangle of skeletal limbs overhead. The ground, cool and slick beneath their bare feet, guided them forward, pulled by a force neither seen nor questioned. The air carried a cloying blend of rot and something disturbingly sweet, a scent that clung to the throat. Beyond the trees, shadows slithered, restless and shifting. At the clearing's core, a fire smoldered, its embers pulsing like breath too shallow to sustain life. No words were spoken, none were necessary. The offering lay ready, the appointed time had come, and in the consuming dark, unseen eyes lingered. She awoke to the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The forest around her pulsed with an unnatural stillness, the trees looming like silent sentinels against the void of the night sky. She did not know her name, nor how she had come to lie in the gnarled roots of an ancient oak. Her limbs were stiff with cold, her skin damp with the breath of the woods. A sound beckoned her, a whisper of movement, a rustling of robes, a head through the shifting mist. A glow flickered like dying embers. Drawn forward by an invisible thread, she stumbled toward the light. The path twisted and curled, the trees pressing close as if urging her onward. She emerged into a clearing where a long, gnarled table stretched before her. Candles flickered in iron holders, their flames burning too still in the stagnant air. The table groaned beneath a feast of glistening meats, overripe fruit, and goblets of wine so dark it could have been blood. Around it, figures sat, their faces hidden beneath heavy hoods. None turned to her, yet she felt their attention coil around her like a noose. A man seated beside an empty chair finally spoke. His voice was smooth, practiced, laced with something she could not name. "You've arrived at last." She stared at him, trying to form words, but her throat was dry, her thoughts a tangled mass of questions. He gestured to the empty seat beside him. "Sit. You are the honored guest." The others did not speak, did not move, but the weight of their presence pressed upon her. Slowly, hesitantly, she lowered herself onto the chair. The wood creaked beneath her, as though something ancient inside it had awoken. Plates were filled before her, and her stomach clenched with an unfamiliar hunger. She did not remember when she had last eaten. She picked up a piece of dark meat, its juices running thick down her fingers, and bit into it. It was rich, almost too much so, and yet she could not stop. The more she ate, the more something inside her stirred. A flash. Blood on her hands, a scream choked short. The weight of a blade in her grasp. She dropped the fork with a clatter, her breath ragged. The man beside her regarded her with something close to amusement. "The memories will come," he said. "They always do." She turned to him, her voice finally finding purchase. "Who am I?" He reached for his own goblet, taking a measured sip. "Does it matter?" She swallowed. "I don't remember anything." "You are fortunate, then." The words unsettled her. She looked down at her hands, saw the faintest ghost of something staining her nails, something red. Another memory surfaced. A darkened room, a voice pleading, her own voice whispering words of finality. A sharp cry, then silence. The coppery scent of blood in the air. She jerked away from the table, stumbling to her feet. "I need to leave." The hooded figures did not move. The man beside her merely sighed, setting his goblet down with a soft clink. "You always say that," he murmured. She blinked. "What?" "You always run, and yet you always return. It is the way of things." Her mind reeled. "No, I don't understand." He gestured to the center of the table, where a single ornate goblet rested, its surface etched with symbols she could not comprehend. "This is the choice you must make. Drink and you will be free of these memories. You will begin again as you have before. Or, remember and bear the weight of what you have done." She could feel the stares of the figures around her, though none spoke. The forest itself seemed to hush, waiting. She stepped backward, her pulse hammering in her throat. "I don't want this." "But you chose it before, again and again." No. Her voice was barely a whisper. His gaze was unyielding. Then run, if you must, but you will find your way back. She turned and fled, the trees closing in behind her, their skeletal limbs reaching. The night swallowed her, but the echoes of their silence chased her deeper into the woods. She did not know how far she ran, nor for how long, but eventually, the breath tore from her lungs, and she collapsed against a crumbling tree trunk. The world spun, her memories a storm within her mind. She saw their faces now, the ones she had taken, the people who had begged, the ones who had cursed her name before she silenced them. The blade in her hand, the smile on her lips. The realization was a sickness, curling deep in her gut. She was a monster. A rustling sound made her jerk her head up. The hooded figures were there, standing just beyond the trees, watching, waiting. "You cannot outrun what you are," the man's voice whispered through the air. Tears burned hot down her cheeks. She had done terrible things, and she had chosen to forget. Not this time. She screamed, a wretched, broken sound, and turned to flee once more. The forest twisted, the trees unfamiliar, the path always leading back to the clearing. The table still stood, the feast untouched, the goblet waiting. The man watched her with something like pity. "There is no other path," he murmured. She fell to her knees, her body racked with sobs. She could not live with this knowledge. She could not live with herself. Her fingers closed around a shard of broken glass from the table, sharp and glistening. The figures did not move as she pressed it to her throat. The man sighed, almost weary. "You will return." Darkness swallowed her whole. And somewhere, deep in the roots of the forest, beneath the loam and bones of forgotten souls, something shifted. The cycle had not ended. It had only begun again. Thank you for joining me this evening. Before you go, make sure you subscribe and leave a like. If you have an idea for a short, scary story, leave it in the comments below. See you at the next campfire.